condolences to the Connor family.
I do indeed, Keith. Good morning. Very sad news. I was listening to Deputy Naughton, and just to send the condolences of the Galway business community to Deputy Connor. I know he represented part of the Galway constituency over time, but I think any TD from the west of Ireland, or indeed Senator, always represents the interests of the west of Ireland when in Dáil Éireann. So I want to send the business community's condolences to his family and friends.
Absolutely. Are you happy, by the way, before I go into the Galway Economic Monitor, are you happy with Mayo's win yesterday?
Well, listen, I'm always a bit conflicted in these issues, as are many others of the Mayo Mafia around town. What I was saying to you, though, is I actually was out at the Dexcom Connacht, or the rugby ground yesterday morning for the Connacht under-18 girls rugby final, and it was super. Wow. So there were plenty of matches on yesterday, and I know you were saying it was a bad day for Galway, but there were some pockets of greatness as well throughout the town.
Listen, and we'll talk about those at about 11:45 today, so we will. Now, the Galway Economic Monitor, which is being put together by Galway Chamber and Grant Thornton, this is quite an interesting document.
It is, and Keith, we were, I suppose, grappling in many ways at the beginning of last year, the council and board at Galway Chamber, in terms of, you were talking anecdotally about certain issues, but we didn't really have data to drive and to discuss and to talk about topics and to lobby in a real meaningful way. So we began mid last year with the first Economic Monitor, which was a start point in terms of saying, right, where are we at on housing commencements? Where are we at on housing completions? Where are we at on public transport usage? What's the usage through our airports, through the port? But equally, what are traffic volumes in the city and the county and the impact it has on the region? And the first one was a starting point. We now have just launched the January edition, which is number 2 of the Economic Monitor. And all of a sudden, we're beginning to get trends, and we're able to measure how we're doing and how we're progressing. And I think the key areas looking at this particular monitor, you know, we're looking at the areas of job growth. It's saying that Galway is at full employment. It's below that magic number of 4% in terms of the employment. What's driving that in many ways is a lot of new job creation across industry. And what's come out very strongly is Enterprise Ireland's investments in Galway City and County. There's over 350 companies supported by Enterprise Ireland, and there's an additional 22 million gone into projects. And we had on Taoiseach in Galway last Friday and Athenry launching one of those, the BIA Innovator. We'll have Platform 94 launching in the next few weeks, hopefully with the CEO of Enterprise Ireland. We'll have Crew launching within a few weeks of that again. And these are the fruition of these investments. Absolutely. It's a collaboration between the WDC, ATU, TG Cahir and others. And what we're seeing is more and more of these type of projects coming along with Skull, Portershed, that have also received funding, is really, really helping the job growth and stimulating activity. So that's the good news aspect of it. We're looking at public transport, and to be fair, public transport usage has been up. It's up over 15% year on year across bus and rail, which is super. So more people are moving to the capacity that's being put on. But we know, and it's interesting, I was out, I've done a lot around the county in the last week, but I was out, just took a photo at the car park at the train station in Oranmore, and it's bursting at the seams.
Chock-a-block,
Absolutely, but at least people are using that, they're using Athenry, and what we need is more engagement, and to be fair, that's underway with Irish Rail. In terms of how we can try and increase that capacity. And we see the investment at the Cant station finally taking place. So BAM are on site and that redevelopment is happening.
But with all the good work that's been done and with all the employment and that magic figure that I never thought we'd ever get to it. I mean, where are all these people going to live?
And therein we land to some of the stickier points in the reports and in the data we have. We know from our work with the Construction Industry Federation and from one event that the Housing Group of Galway Chamber facilitated last year, we need to be delivering 3,000 units a year in Galway for the next 10 years to play catch up and also to future-proof where we're going. And if we look in the last quarter measured under this, we had 370 new house completions. So if we're averaging at that, we're talking about 12 to 1,400 units coming on stream a year. Now that's an improvement.
So it's 10% of what we need.
It's really well off what we need, way off what we need. And that's coming from a low base. Last year it was worse. So there are schemes. To be fair, if everything that was somewhere in the planning system was delivered, we'd be hitting our annual target. The challenge we have is so much is caught in the contagion of the system. It's in appeals, it's on boards Planola, or somewhere on that journey.
Okay.
So there are people willing to develop schemes. The local authority is trying to develop their own social housing schemes. The challenge we have is getting it through that juggernaut.
But can the minister not make an order and just grant planning for such major infrastructure that we need, rather than it being dragged through council, dragged through on board Planola, heading off to Europe?
And listen, we have the Minister with us in 2 weeks' time for that very
Okay.
question. So Minister for Housing, Planning and Heritage, Darragh O'Brien, is with us on the 12th of February. We have the Chamber Board meeting him, the Housing Committee are meeting him, and then he's addressing a lunch in the Clayton Hotel in Ballybrit that's open to the public for people to attend.
So you have, and I mean, I was reading Sunday Business Post and the other Sunday papers, you have people who really and truly want, you have developers who want to build but can't because of planning.
Because of planning, and that's also impacting the commercial viability, because if they thought that they would get planning in a short enough term, they could bridge bank finance, debt, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
At the moment, it's quite hard to get finance for some of the schemes that they want because they don't know, is it a 1-year cycle, is it a 4-year cycle that they're going to be before they get through the planning. And with the way the VAT situation and other taxes are around planning and development at the moment, all of that has to be front-loaded.
Okay.
So there's a huge barrier to new schemes coming on. And I think there's a huge relationship, Keith, and this people will be sick listening to me on this bugbear, but there's a huge relationship between the planning declines and our transport and our mobility in terms of how we get around the city and indeed the county. And one of the huge shocks for me, actually, once we got this data in the last few weeks, we were working off stats. If you remember, 2016, the Western Development Commission had done data on transport, commuters coming in and out of Galway. And at that stage, they were talking about 72,000 daily commuters. We have, now this was an extensive piece of work done. The last week in November, we have mapped the 7 arterial routes coming in and out of Galway. So the last week in November, it's not peak season, it's not Christmas shopping, there's nothing to skew the figures. And we're now operating at 109,000 daily commuters. Right?
Wow.
So that's a sign of the progress of the city, the economic development of the city, the jobs in the city. It's a sign of so much positive. But it really, really drives home the point when we're talking about how we plan for the city. When we're looking at the delivery of transport infrastructure in the city, we have 3 constituencies. It's not just the city. And I think those who oppose the Outer Ring Road, for example, just focus on, well, cycling infrastructure and Glewis is going to solution our problems. It's not. It's not even going to come close to scratching the surface. We have the population in the city. We have the people of Connemara, who no matter what of the 2 routes they come in, they're going to end up in Newcastle and meandering their way along the Headford Road, unless they go out via Eamon O'Keefe's house up through Cornamona and the mountains to try and join the motorway in Tuam, which some are doing, a precarious route, but more and more people from North Connemara are doing that in an effort to avoid Galway. And then we have the 109,000 daily commuters, which is only going to grow.
But Kenny, that's an increase daily of 37,000.
Absolutely. In the last 7 years.
That's a huge amount of people.
Yeah. And they're coming, there's 7 routes tracked. And Keith, in an effort to try and really, really highlight this, we're using the data from this report and we're saying, right, this is far beyond a city issue. This is a regional issue. So I've been working with colleagues across the territory and we're launching a series of 12 regional events. I was in Leinster House last week for 2 days, going to Brussels tomorrow again for another 3 days on this very topic. But what we have is got a commitment from our Octus members across the territory to support events starting in Westport, Claremorris, Tuam, Mount Bellew, Loughrea, Clarnbridge, Innis, Limerick, and then 4 in Connemara, in Moycullen, in Furbo, in Carrow and in Clifton.
What's the purpose of this?
The purpose of this is very much to make it very clear to everyone in Leinster House, to the Fine Gael party when they're in Galway on the 6th of April for their think-in for their annual event at the party, the Ordesh, to make it very clear that this is no longer a Galway City issue. This is impacting the future growth and development of the region. People are furious. Lives are being upset. We're talking about Galway being a regional centre of excellence for academia, for healthcare and for so much else. And yet people are congested trying to get in, out and around the city. And it just has to be accepted at government that we need exceptional measures.
But just even looking at the screen here, Keith, speaking of traffic is crazy in Athenry this morning, especially around schools, and the Mart is manic altogether. And Keith, his caller, said traffic on the bridge this morning. I can see where the numbers have gone up so much. It was as busy as I've ever seen it coming over from the west side heading to Parkmore.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And again, this is a sign in many ways of success. So much is going so well for the city and the region. And the announcements to have Von Taoiseach down last week, he was down the week before for the Dexcom sod turning.
Yeah.
We are really, really, really the envy of many locations, not just in Ireland, but across Europe, where we're winning bids, we're winning on investments. The challenge is we're not delivering on infrastructure. And to be fair to Minister Darragh O'Brien, one of the big pieces which will help drive this on is if he can get his new bill, his new planning bill through the Oireachtas. And that's part of the regional engagement as well, in that we need to call and ensure that every TD and senator across the territory fully endorses that. It may not be perfect. There may be aspects of it that we're not happy with. But one of the big pieces is reform of An Bord Pleanála. And the fact that you submit an application to An Bord Pleanála, it has to come out in 6 months' time. That's the critical. It has to be, or there needs to be a very valid reason for it.
Is the law there for that now?
With the bill, once it's enacted, if it gets through Leinster House, and as you can imagine, there are those who are opposing it, in the same way as there are those who are trying to intervene in the latest review of the Galway Transport Strategy to have certain projects removed. We need to make very clear that as a united front, not just Galway, the west of Ireland, we need to challenge these behaviours.
Okay. Somebody said, brilliant question you asked, Keith, cut all the red tape on Bord Pleanála or turning everyone down, and let the minister make a big decision if he has some things to do with it, and we know what that is. But he has to, somebody has to. And another caller said, Keith, if your home was being knocked for the proposed ring road, you would want to say, so don't suggest that planning should be rushed through. I cannot believe what Mr. Deery is saying. Imagine getting a letter from the County Council, read the Greenway, and you're not the owner of the land even. Get real, it's all aspirational. I want my rights to object, this caller said. Come on, traffic in Galway City, get the school buses sorted for everyone, and then look at it again, this caller said. And another caller said, Keith, nobody can move around the city at rush hour, which goes into the weekend now. We're all suffering, especially those of us who prefer to take a bus or cycle. It would be good to hear Kenny and the Chamber call for alternative options of having all our eggs rather than having all of our eggs in one basket.
So there's a number of bits there. I think I agree all the eggs are needed. We need cycling, we need bus connects, we need sensible bus connects to go to park and ride sites that still aren't chosen, because they can't be chosen because the determined route still hasn't been approved. So has the County Council and City Council failed to do this over, or is it the department? It's a combination of, okay, the County Council are the lead applicant on the outer bypass, supported by the City Council. They're working with the NTA and TII. So straight away, you have 4 different agencies and organisations involved. To be fair, there are lots of great people within those organisations trying to drive this on. There does need to be greater coordination, and I think we're seeing that come, particularly with new leadership coming into the local authorities. There's a greater push to try and deliver on this. But all the eggs can't fall into place. So, for example, you can't deliver bus routes to park and ride sites because you don't know where the park and ride sites are going to be, because you don't know will the road be approved. That's the critical interplay that needs to take place here in terms of how you kind of put the web. You can bring in at a pilot, and this is where I would really be excited to see with the new with the election and the new councillors coming through in June. What you can do is pilots across the city where you can close lanes, you can try and facilitate additional cycling space, try and make it a little more safe, even though it is treacherous on some of the routes for cyclists at the moment. The challenge is you don't have an alternative route for the cars, for the vehicles. And when we're talking, remember, the city population is 84,000. That's only one constituency that cycling will sort out. We still have the 109,000 commuters, and we still have the people of Connemara. So they're really important, and we cannot lose sight of that. So the person who talks about school buses serving the schools in the city, that's one piece of the puzzle, but on its own, it's not going to do a significant amount for the people sitting at the moment coming in at the Headford Road, the Tuam Road, sitting at the edge of the motorway coming in from the Galway Clinic. I want to just mention then that one person spoke rightly about the challenge that this brings for homeowners, and particularly the homeowners who are impacted. The challenge for those homeowners at this stage is actually the passage of time, and the inertia around this is actually their biggest frustration. In many ways, I won't say they've nearly absorbed the fact, because some are really angry, and I know I've had engagements. I remember once being at a dinner up in my home in Achill, and one of them coming to the table in a restaurant, and I won't say attacking, but being very, very vocal in terms of the impact this is having on their home and their lives. The challenge we have, and they have, is at the moment they can't do anything. They can't sell the house because it's not sellable, because nobody knows what's going to happen. They don't want to invest in the home in terms of upgrading it. So actually, many of those homeowners at this stage would love to see a yay or a nay, so that they can get on with their lives and either reinvest in their home or move if it's a case that they have to move. And that is actually the reality for many of those homeowners that I've engaged with at this stage.
I spoke with one of the homeowners a few weeks ago, and she basically said to me, at my age in life, where am I going to go?
Yeah. And
it's going on so flipping long.
Correct. And the passage of time is the biggest issue here. There's one individual that I spoke to in a very senior role in one of the organisations, and he's 23 years working on this project. This project is older than 23 years, but let's not lose faith on that, because actually I was in Aberdeen before Christmas, and they finally delivered. In Aberdeen, you think, as a sustainable city of the future, in terms of new energy, etc. They were the guts of 60 years trying to develop their outer route. So on the scale of things, people accept things take time. The challenge we have is, at the moment, the makeup of government, and particularly one minister trying to intervene in a Galway scenario to remove a key piece of infrastructure, and he doesn't have a solution as to what's going to replace it for the 3 constituencies. And I think that's the real frustration and the real worry in the eyes of the business community.
That's called politics. And can politics not be part in this regard? And
this is where politics, and we have examples and precedents, for example, with Adair, which is it's a smaller town, but
money talks.
Exactly. These decisions can be made when they need to be, and that's why I want to bring the region into it. That's why I need people, rather than fatigued and saying, "Oh, it'll never happen," and having no alternative. I need people to re-energise themselves, particularly coming into the local and European elections and potentially a general election this year. We need to vote for and support the candidates that want to see a sustainable Galway of the future, and whether they like it or not, unfortunately, it's a mixed bag. It's not just one or the other. We need all the solutions that are on the table. And we're being told budget isn't the issue, ironically, and that was a concern in the past, but budget will be supported. The government are saying the mandate is there. However, unfortunately, we're still not able to progress it just because of the government makeup and one key ministry at the moment that does not want to see Galway progress. And that is the challenge we have.
And that's the Department of Eamon Ryan's department?
Correct.
Okay. Where can people get the Galway Economic Monitor? I mean, it's very comprehensive. Well done to Grant Thornton. And it's good to have something now to draw a line in the sand and move forward from.
And we have, what the beauty is, we've measures. So even when the big projects are taking their time to get through, anecdotally, we know our regional airports, the data and the stats are up in terms of their usage. The ports, the data and the stats are up. It's great to be able every 6 months to come back and reflect on how we're doing. And there will be sometimes the report will be generated and you're thinking, God, things are declining, or, is there a recession imminently?
You need that information.
But you need to know, exactly, you need to know blind. What you know and what you don't know, even better still. And that's the real important bit. And I think really housing is going to be a key one, as we see, hopefully we see the trend improving from a very low base. But my God, we need to gazump it a lot. And that's the ambition.
Yeah.
Rachel Stewart and Emer Joyce, who are the chairs of my housing committee, are really looking forward to the meetings with the minister. We're bringing the Construction Industry Federation around the table in those meetings. And it's really a one voice from Galway. The American Chamber, IBEC, we're all in the same mindset. Yeah. We want to see Galway progress into the future.
But they get it. Rachel gets it.
Correct.
I mean, building is in her blood.
Correct.
So she gets it. Listen, well done to you, Kenny Deery. I think it's a very interesting and frank conversation we're after having. The Galway Economic Monitor, thank you indeed for getting in contact with us on this one and giving it to me indeed last week. They can pick it up on your website, I think?
On our website. It's on the front page of the website. It's across our social media channels as well. And I'll be leaving some in the building here, Keith. So if anybody's bored, they can have a cuppa and be reading it outside.
Do you know what? You don't have to be bored. It's very easy to follow, so it is.
Yeah, very good.
If I understand it, Mr. Deery, anybody can. Now, yet to come on the programme, by the way, we are looking at a young man from Tuam who's heading to the Olympics. Stay tuned for that and more to come on today's programme. Quick commercial break, back after these.